The Lifestyle Show, presented by Selena Mackenzie.
Now, our first guest of the week is a paranormal historian and expert on various television shows and documentaries, including the internationally broadcast shows Jack Osborne's Haunted. She joins us now to discuss her paranormal career. Welcome to the show, Dr. Kate Cherrell.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I guess the first question has to be, how and why did you get into this? Or is it just a natural gift that finds you?
I'm not sure if gift is the right word, but it's certainly something that I feel like the stars aligned from a very young age to lead me into this rather odd and unconventional career. But I suppose I always had an interest in certainly the 19th century, the Victorian era, and my love of my very early love of cemeteries in particular. I spent a lot of time in cemeteries as a child, which obviously explains a lot. Coupled with this obsession with ghosts that developed very naturally. One of my grandparents was a bit of an oddball as well, and gave me some of my earliest books that were on ghosts, ghoulies, and aliens. And I think while everyone else grew out of it, I started looking at the more historical side of things and the sociological roots of hauntings. So I don't go around day to day saying, right, there's a ghost there, there's a ghost in your house there. Like that's not the reality of what I do. If it were only that easy. But I'm certainly more on the academic side of things. I look into literary hauntings and socially, what ghosts are to us. So it'd be easy enough to say ghosts are annoying little beings under white sheets, but actually ghosts are these amazing tools and part of the human experience that we can project our fears, our social fears, our personal, religious, political fears. Ghosts are so much more than a dead thing going woo in the middle of the night. And yeah, that's turned into my whole career focus. And of course, as you said, I've done lots of television and interesting media things as a result of that.
I'm sure. So as far as ghosts are concerned, are they from the other side? Are they from the dead? I mean, although I know we see it in cartoons, they've got white sheets and they frighten people, but are they our imagination or are they real?
I think it would be fabulous to say, right, here's a world exclusive. I've just found out.
Yeah, and I can prove it.
Yeah. If only. I think the most important thing about ghosts is that whether they're real or not is, first of all, is entirely down to personal experience, whether or not someone believes that spirits are around them, because oftentimes it brings an awful lot of personal comfort, and I don't think it's anyone's position to try and remove that from someone. But I think the curious thing with ghosts is that it doesn't matter if they're real or not, because the experiences that we have with them as an individual and as a community are the same. You cannot believe in ghosts, but absolutely love scary films and gothic novels of ghosts and hauntings. So there's no necessity for ghosts to be real, because the terror they bring into our lives is very real.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Why we as human beings like to be scared, like horror movies and things like that.
Mm. Yeah, we're ultimately, as a people, we're adrenaline junkies.
Yeah,
we're searching for human connection in many, many forms, but ultimately we're searching for thrills, little frissons of excitement, and there's this kind of safe fear that we can experience with certainly paranormal entertainment, horror films, horror novels, any type of media, is that we can frighten ourselves, but ultimately we're in control of that environment. So I think it's a little bit like going and getting a poorly judged tattoo on a holiday. You sort of get a little bit of, I'm doing something a little bit wild, a little bit out of my norm. Exactly. It's a moment of rebellion against your own rationality. And I think that's something to be absolutely encouraged.
Yeah. So presumably you have had paranormal experiences, Kate.
I have. I've had arguably, I've had far fewer real, I would classify as real paranormal experiences than I have had fraudulent ones. I've seen the best and the worst mediums in the world.
Really?
But,
Tell me about the best, because I'm intrigued. I want to believe, but I've never been sort of proved. Nobody's ever proved to me that I should believe yet.
Yeah, I think healthy skepticism should be maintained at all times, and I'd never tell anyone to go straight into things and believe. There's a big difference between being a believer and having an open mind. But certainly, some of the best mediums have been the most unassuming people that you would just pass them in the street. They don't turn up in big Lurex suits or anything. And I sat down with a medium that I was working with a few months ago, and they immediately just said, I need to tell you something, and I'm just getting this message. And they'd never met me before. They knew nothing about this personal aspect of my life that wasn't on the internet, nowhere else, and just recited my full extended family's names, their circumstances,
Crikey.
And exactly what was happening at that time. And no one knew.
Wow.
And it was as if someone had just gone into the deepest recesses of my mind and plucked out these truths. And there's plenty of things that people could interpret from that. They could say, oh, well, it was a lucky guess, but a lot of my family have been named very creatively. So that one very, very much made me question a lot of my own beliefs as well. But at the same time, as much as that's very, very exciting and very validating for me, arguably when researching the paranormal, hauntings, mediums, I love the rubbish ones more. Because you've just got to admire the front of some people. So I've been around mediums who said that they could read objects, they could touch an object, and they could sense the whole history of a particular thing. And I was with a medium who grasped an old fireplace and said, I can taste 400 years of history. I'm seeing so-and-so, I'm seeing Henry VIII passing through here. Little did they know that face was actually fiberglass and was part of a prop that had been put there a couple of years previously. It's those things. That's what I think so brilliant about being human in amongst all of this. Because as much as you had those little head scratches, you also had those moments of, oh, this is all rather silly. But we are still looking for those little curiosities that keep us searching for more, but you've got to swim through a lot of treacle to get to those.
Yes, I'm sure. I just think it's sad when these pretend mediums sort of play on people's vulnerability. You know, if someone's lost a loved one and they charge them and you know, like I say, if they're vulnerable, they might think that their husband is visiting and they're not. And if they do it for money, I don't think that's right.
Absolutely. I would really hammer home to everyone that, you know, you're not going to necessarily find any closure or the closure that you want through repeated mediumship. And again, being a paranormal historian, you see a lot of patterns in human behaviours, and you see a lot of stories coming around in circles again and again. And certainly since the 19th century and the dawn of modern spiritualism, when we started seeing mediums in the same way we see them today, there have been repeated cycles of exploitation. And it's exploitation and entertainment. And somewhere in the middle of that is a very earnest thread of spirituality, of people that don't want money, of people that want to help people and, fully believe in the legitimacy of their abilities. But yeah, I would always tread very, very carefully around anyone that can tell you they can do anything supernatural. Not saying that they can't, but I think protecting ourselves should always be top of our list.
Yeah, I agree. So how did you become a paranormal historian? It was one thing having an interest in it, but to actually do it, how did that all happen?
Well, academically, really, I started, my background's in literature, and I went through up to my master's looking at 19th century Gothic, so sort of the dawn of genre fiction and sensation fiction, the sort of genre fiction that we really like today. And when I started looking at this and started looking at death cultures and mourning cultures, I found myself really immersed in spiritualism, because in the 19th century itself, it saw itself, certainly in the Western part of the world, as an age of great developments and And we had the Industrial Revolution. We had these amazing scientific discoveries as well. But at the same time, there was this really ferocious melting pot of religious unease, because how do you marry your long-held religious beliefs with all these new discoveries and people telling you that up is down and left is right? It was a great era of change. And so I found myself fascinated by spiritualism, because in this age of rationality, two young girls in the middle of rural New York started saying that they were knocking on a table and communicating with a spirit. Now, ordinarily, you'd think, oh, that might be like a regional news story at most. However, that developed and became this enormous new religion that within 5 or 10 years of it being established had millions of followers across the globe. That's a phenomenal reach. And so why would that happen in an age of such amazing rational developments? And it's quite simply, it's because we need it as humans. And so when I started looking into spiritualism, started looking at spiritualist books, spiritualist magazines, I started finding this amazing subculture and this amazing wealth of curious human experiences and creativity. And in looking at that, we can understand our society a lot more. And we can understand a lot more of our neuroses by looking at our paranormal past as well. Yeah. So it's not as simple as I go home and I talk about ghosts all day, but it's a lot of archival work and a lot of looking at very, very old publications of people trying to understand their environment with increasingly spiritual means, I suppose. Yeah. But I went straight through, did my PhD, looking at mediumship and the Gothic. And I've continued doing that. I continue to publish academically and commercially on paranormal history. And I think as well, ultimately, people like reading about spooks, because often it's just a light little article. You don't want to go home and read about all the horrors of the world. Sometimes you just want to read about a goblin over a cup of tea and then go about your day. And I'm happy to provide that service.
Brilliant. And you mentioned that you're really into the 19th century sort of Victorian era. Is it true that spiritualism took that era by storm?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think when we look back at the 19th century, it's very easy to see it as an age of credulity, that people would believe that all manner of fantastical things would happen simply because God said it would. But spiritualism came at the perfect time with the perfect figureheads. Now, spiritualism in the UK and Europe is essentially an American import. It came over in the 1850s. But there was a far greater melting pot of beliefs before that. So before we had seance and mediums and all these really recognizable Victorian things, we had a lot of developments in Sweden and Norway looking at these things called vital fluids, which sound rather horrible, but it's ultimately about this unseen force that powers all living things. So people were trying to pathologize this, trying to make it fit into different scientific theories. And then suddenly, when this knocking and communicating with spirits came along, all the puzzle pieces seemed to fit. So the groundwork had been there for quite a long time. But spiritualism itself was incredibly accessible to all classes. So it didn't just come in for the intellectual elite. It came in from the ground up. It came in through the working classes. And so it passed so quickly between really geographically diverse communities because it was at exactly the right time. We had newspapers, we had magazines for the first time, we had greater literacy levels than ever before. So people could not only read magazines, they could read spiritualist books, they could start their own churches, their own communities, they could sponsor mediums, they could make new communities exclusively around new religion and learn together. So it's ultimately, it took the 19th century by storm because it was community focused and it wasn't overly intellectualized. It was fully accessible. And I think that's really why a lot of paranormal fields, whether they're people that go ghost hunting or go and see mediums in village halls, that still thrives today because of its accessibility, because it's not wrapped up in big words and certificates. It's entirely accessible to the average man.
Yeah, and your job must be easier now because everything's more accessible, isn't it, via the internet?
It's easier and trickier at the same time.
Really?
The internet allows for, the internet allows for amazing access. Like archival work, like I say, is fantastic. Now I don't have to go and traipse down to London all the time to go and dig through magazine archives and so forth. But at the same time, the internet doesn't have a quality control. So a lot of misinformation, a lot of rather questionable documents and doctored documents can pass through undetected. So you've always got to be very careful about what you read on the internet in all senses, I suppose. But
yes,
certainly in my line of work, if everything was accessible on the internet, I think I'd probably be a minimalist. But instead, I'm surrounded by about 3,000 dusty books that no one but me wants to traipse through.
Bless you! I love books. I love real books. Far better than a Kindle.
Oh yes, you can't. You can't beat them.
So, as far as the TV shows that you work on are concerned. How do you help them? What's the realities of paranormal TV? Do they use you for your knowledge?
Lots of different things, really. I've been quite fortunate to be involved in many different capacities. Sometimes it's advisory, but mostly I've done a lot of shows as a paranormal historian and paranormal investigator. So in the case of the Haunted Homecoming series, which I've done with Jack Osborne and Jonathan Ross, they were basically, I was the guide. Certainly with the Jonathan Ross series, I was introducing Jonathan to the realities of paranormal investigation and looking at the histories behind places that he grew up around or was overly familiar with. So with those series, I really like them because I think it shows people that you don't have to go down to some great haunted castle to find some amazing stories to keep yourself awake at night. They're generally on your doorstep. And I think that's one of the great things about that series in particular. But I've been a historian, investigator. I did a series with an exorcist recently. I did a special with him.
Oh,
and that was looking at. Oh, I know. I've been everywhere.
And do you think
I'm
exorcism
like a
does?
moss.
Do you think exorcism does work?
I think it does, but not necessarily in the way that some religious groups would have it. I think, again, it would depend on the belief system of the person undergoing it and the belief system of those participating. So you could see it as an exorcism worked because there was an actual being, some transient supernatural being attached to a person, or you could see it as a form of therapy, a form of mindfulness. Yes. And that person needed to be acknowledged and talked through this process for them to free themselves of whatever it was that was plaguing them. And I think somewhere in between that is the healthy, pardon the pun, happy medium, where I think. So I think things like exorcism, in reality, I'd love to say that it's much like the film The Exorcist, and there's lots of spinning heads and all manner of dramatic things. But really, it's a lot of, it's sadly, no. Although maybe I just haven't been going to the right exorcisms. So it's really just a lot of talking and a lot of prayer.
Oh, dear. Well, as if you haven't got enough to do, you're now an author as well. You've got a book out called Begotten.
Yes, it's my first Gothic novel.
Congratulations!
And, naturally, thank you very much. And I think with it coming out in May of all months, I'm trying to promote it as the ultimate beach read. So, if anyone's thinking that their holiday's a little bit too tropical and they want to be scared, if they want a bit of a thriller, they want to talk about the nature of ghosts and if we can ever actually trust our senses, then I think Begotten will be the perfect airport read for anyone on the way there or anyone trying to relax in their garden at home.
Sounds good to me. I have to ask you, Kate, your accent sounds very, very recognisable. Are you from the Midlands?
I'm from Grimsby.
I'm from Derby.
Yeah.
I just recognised we had quite similar accents.
Yeah, see, a lot of my family are from that way, so I've got this little mishmash of
Bless you. Well, just to say for our listeners again, the book's called Begotten, a Gothic novel. It's out now. And do you have a website, Kate, if people want to find out more about you?
Yes, yeah, you can find me at katecherrell.com, or if you want to read any of the aforementioned quick reads about all manner of spooky histories, you can find an enormous archive of thousands of articles at burialsandbeyond.com. And yeah, you can get that. You can see sneak peeks of Begotten as well. So I'm all over.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for your time, Kate.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.